Let's settle this once and for all. Ad set budget optimization, or ABO, is something that you should not be using when it comes to Facebook ads anymore for 99% of situations. And I promise you, if you think, well, that 1%, that's me, it's not. And when we're going to get into where it's actually is appropriate to be using and why it's a big problem for almost every reason that you still think that you should be using it. And we're not just going to back this by my opinion. No, like always, we're going to use objective facts and silly things like data and common sense. Plus, like I said, we're going to break down to when it actually might be a good idea. So with that being said, let's settle this once and for all. Ad set budget optimization, or ABO, is something you should never use ever again. With one exception, and let's get into it. So let's establish some simple facts. What is ad set budget optimization, and when do we really use it? Well, ad set budget optimization is a way of forcing spend into specific audiences within a campaign. Potentially, you want to force spend into an interest group or a lookalike audience. To be fair, you shouldn't be using interest groups, and lookalike audiences aren't going to solve your problem. Remember, ads do the targeting, audiences don't. Also, we have to remember, is this what we really want to do? Is it actually a good idea for us to control where Facebook is spending the money? And if so, how often are we going to be making that decision? How much do we want to change things around and take the control out of the machine? Because when we look at incomplete, out of context data in the rear view mirror, is that really a good idea to understand where we want to go in the future, where we have no control over any decision being made? Now, why would we even want to use ABO, like ever? Well, it comes off of some assumptions. Number one, we have absolute trust in Facebook's data because it's complete, it's high context, and we know we're getting every bit of information that we have so we can take a very accurate depiction of what happened so we can predict the future. Number two, it says all of our ad sets are at a learning phase, so we can take a look at their previous performance and use that to ultimately have a projectable outcome so that we can manage our investment portfolio moving forward. Number three, it also says that we're smarter than Facebook. Yes, Facebook has billions of users. And yes, it has trillions of data points on all of those users. And yes, it's been looking at every single decision we've made with buying behavior, all the websites we've been on, and literally everything we've done on multiple platforms going back over a decade. Oh, it also says that audiences matter and that we probably have a lot of them because we don't believe that ads actually do the targeting, which is complete nonsense. Now, argument number one says we have total trust in Facebook's data. Do we really see 100% of the data that Facebook has? No. Do we believe that this information is coming in real time? No. Do we believe that Facebook conversion data has zero overlap with any other channels? No. So if the answer to all of these questions is ultimately no, how can you have any real confident decision-making power based on previous data trends to predict what's going to happen in the future? If you have no integrity in the data from the past, the idea of projecting outcomes is a very, very low confidence, high risk move that I suggest you kind of think about not using anymore. Now, argument number two is that all of our ad sets are out of the learning phase. Now, the learning phase is Facebook's way of saying they have confidence to deliver consistent results. There is statistical significance for the projectability of the data that we have as a sign for future outcomes. Number two, without consistent results, can we really ever actually make confident decisions? If we don't have consistent results and the machine doesn't have statistical significance to deliver projectable outcomes, do we have any real sense of what the future is going to bring? And if we don't, do we really want to try to predict that with our money and base our future of our business on that? And lastly, ad sets in the learning phase also pollute the data set, making everything that's not in the learning phase really, really untrustworthy. Argument number three says we're smarter than Facebook. Yeah, they see billions of people on millions of websites with dozens of pixel events on a pretty dynamic evergreen basis, trillions of data points per user. And the average user swipes the height of the Eiffel Tower on a daily basis, seeing hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of content. That is literally trillions of data points in the machine learning platform. Indexing that against every behavior that you've taken on the platform, all the pages you've ever been to, and all of your purchasing behavior for anything that is related to your credit cards or your taxes. That trend analysis going back potentially over a decade. For Facebook to understand what a user might want to see to condition or prime them to take an action. Versus you, the marketer, staring at an incomplete dashboard of information with low context. Do you really think you're smarter than Facebook? So what are we supposed to do? Well, use CBO. And I get it, but certain ad spends are gonna see less spend. Good. But I get better Facebook ROAS with ABO. Is ROAS a good thing? No. ROAS doesn't mean anything. It's a very low value data point because it doesn't actually talk about cash flow, cost of goods, and you can optimize a really good ROAS all day and cripple the growth potential of a business and let Facebook have credit for sales that are also happening on a million other places. You can react to very low quality data. Maybe CPC and CTR is what you value because you still think Facebook is a PPC platform, which it hasn't been since 2014. In the classic, I can't trust Facebook. Well, if you can't trust Facebook, if you can't trust your employee to take the actions that you want, isn't that really your fault for training them poorly and giving them bad tools to succeed? Now, argument number one, better ad sets see less spend. Well, maybe the reason it's a better ad set is because it didn't have to do nearly as much work. If it doesn't have to spend nearly as much, of course the bid's going to be better. Because remember, the algebra for what you get charged in an auction is budget, estimated action rate, and advertiser score. If that budget is smaller, or if the low-hanging fruit is fewer people, then you spend less money. Yeah, it's going to be more efficient. Is it scalable? No. Do you really want to build your business off of chasing short wins with high profit margins that aren't scalable, that force you to basically start over every few days? Does that really seem like a good plan? Versus investing in something long-term that gets smarter and smarter without you having to do any more work. Argument number two, well, I get better ROAS with ABO. No, you don't. Maybe you feel like you do, but ultimately, ROAS doesn't matter. In an isolated situation, sure, but is that actually happening for the spend that you put out as a business and the overall revenue you're getting on a daily basis? Do you legitimately think that a Facebook ad has any control over ROAS? Which could basically, you're saying, my Facebook ad can control the AOV of a customer. My ad controls how much they spend at my store, whether it's $20 or $2,000. The honest truth is, anybody can make the Facebook UI look good. But if you legitimately want to grow your business, you have to worry about the volume and quality of your customers and what happens after the click. And no Facebook ad is ever going to be able to control that. And if you're focusing on ROAS, you're focusing on a low confidence, high stress situation of things that you can't control. And that's a pretty bad decision-making flow. So when do we actually want to ever use ABO? Well, there are some really good times, really two of them. Hey, if I'm trying to control daily frequency, now we're having a conversation. And why would I want to do that? Maybe I have a DPA ad, or I have some sort of rebuttal upsell, and I want to make sure that I'm saturating some sort of a target audience a certain volume of times to really get an outcome that I can control and is desirable for me. Or two, maybe I'm willing to sacrifice performance for insight. Maybe I'm willing to accept a worse outcome, not only for that ad set, not only for that campaign, but for my entire business. Because for some reason, the data that I'm going to get, the insight of that situation is more important than actually getting good performance. In those cases, sure, go ABO.